Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to our Decorating with Fresh Greens class. Peg is going to be showing us some ways to decorate the house with fresh greens, and I assume some other things as well today. So very excited to see that. Just going to go over a couple of things as I see members of the audience dialing in. For those of you who have attended our classes before, welcome back. For those of you who are new, just a couple of things to go over. You are muted when you join the call. We can't see you or hear you. So if you have questions, we might have the opportunity to take some Q&A at the end of the class. So write those into the Q&A box that you'll see on your Zoom menu. And if we're able to take questions, if we have time at the end of the call, then we'll take some of those questions. If you have any technical issues or anything during the call, you can also submit a question through the Q&A box and I'll get back to you, or you can submit it through chat. So that's all from me. I want to give a big welcome to Peg. Peg really needs no introduction. Peg has been with us for many years as an instructor. She was on our Gardening Advisor television program, and she's been teaching these classes here for quite a while and is very popular and does a great job. So I'm just going to give a big welcome to Peggy and go ahead and turn it over to her. And Peg, have at it. Thank you for joining us.
Sally, and thanks to all of you for joining me. This is, I think, perhaps one of my most fun classes. I love working with fresh greens. I love the textures and the colors and the fragrance and being able to bring them into the home. And what I'm going to share with you today are some basic things, but I think more inspirational perhaps as to what you can use and containers and looking around your home or looking around the garden center as I've done. Certainly have an advantage in that respect because I can walk through the garden center and say, I think I could use that. And actually, before I start any how-to or talking about the greens in particular, I want to begin with something that's fun. Not everybody wants or needs or can use very traditional styles in their designs. And so I was inspired when I saw these gold containers in different sizes to do a grouping that would be lovely in particularly a contemporary home. And so I put wet oasis inside these containers because they hold water. And the largest one is filled with white pine and incense cedar, primarily those two things, because I didn't want it to be busy, okay? So this is a container filled simply with wet oasis, white pine, and the incense cedar. So that's the largest container, kept very simple. And then, of course, we have those wonderful Ilex verticillata, the beauty berries, okay? Not beauty berries, winter berries. Beauty berries are lovely also, but they're purple or white. Okay, so I put, again, oasis in this container and filled it just with the berries. So that's a part of this trio. And then I saw this sweet little round one, and I thought, three, that's good. And I just wired some little pine cones and tucked in a couple of tiny pieces of pine. This is also in Oasis, primarily to give me something to press the wiring from the cones into, and also to put the pine into where it will stay moist. And so that little sweetie pie, I'll turn it around actually, and maybe you can see the Oasis. Of course, the pine cones don't need the moisture, but the pine does. And so that's sitting down in front of that. So there's your really contemporary trio. Now it's going to take me a moment to sit these back into place here. We'll sit it back. Yeah, I just want to talk about some fun things first, okay? Another thing in walking through the garden center, I saw some candle holders. And sometimes candle holders don't have to hold just candles, okay? So let me bring this one forward. There were 3 of these, and so I decided I actually lined this one with foil, but it didn't have to because this would hold water, and made an arrangement that can be viewed all the way around. And into this, I added some of the Brown Beauty Magnolia, along with the pine and the berries, okay? That goes into place. And then you would simply use your candles, not to let it go over where it would burn. I had it arranged so that it would not go out over that. So you can put your candles into this area. Now, I know that we do carry the candles that light with a battery in it. And that, of course, is the safest method that you could use. So this is one of the, I think, that would be effective either in a traditional manner or could be used in a very contemporary situation. Now, I think I can bring this up since we're talking about groupings of things, okay? These were candle holders also, and they were in 3 sizes. So I thought that too would be fun. So I have that. And then I did an arrangement. I don't know, can you see this, Sally, all the way, honey?
Yes, I can see it.
Because
Just
it's
very, very top is cut off a little, the last leaf.
well, you'll have to imagine that it has a pretty top, okay? But we would do candles perhaps in these. And I love the elegance of the magnolia and the size of this. They're different varieties of magnolia. And this one is a leaf that is a medium size and lends itself to this kind of an arrangement. So it's very simple. It's just the white pine and the magnolia. Now, as we go along, I'll ask you to use your imagination a little bit. If you want to add things to this, it would be pretty with some fresh flowers, perhaps, in that. I also thought that it would be pretty. I use a lot of dried things, and I dry a lot of my hydrangea, and I decided to hit that with just a little bit of spray. It's a purple spray, and one could either glue them in or tuck them into the oasis. Don't know how you feel about the color, and of course I can't see what I'm doing here, so I would fill all of it if I could do that with this. Can you get the idea? What do you think, Sally? Can you see that well enough to get the idea of how it would look?
Yeah, I'm getting the idea from it. Very
Okay.
cool. I didn't know you could do that. So.
Well, you can spray it any color that you choose. And you could also spray it gold if you choose to do that. You could put it into your Christmas tree. I like doing a lot of the natural things. I also brought up some amaryllis because people tie that to the season. And that sort of thing could be used in there also. It's a little bit bright, but it could be used. I think that I also have a red one over here, which I sat the container on top of. But you could also use the red in there. Okay. And I also felt that it might be kind of fun to trail a beautiful red ribbon down through here and through the others. So you'll have to use your imagination a little bit as to what you would enjoy in your home. Now I'm going to turn my back to you for a moment while I put this away. And this one is a little on the heavy side. So we're going to tuck it in there. Can you still see this, Sally? We're in the learning curve here with this Zoom thing, okay? So I'm not really sure what's being portrayed on this, but I would like to be sure that you get the idea completely. You see, you don't really have to poke this into the oasis. It's quite attractive, just tucked in there and it'll stay. But I would use more than that, okay? So now having done that and given you perhaps just a little bit of inspiration, we will start talking about some of the mechanics behind some of this. Number one, the first thing that you want to do with your fresh greens is to condition them. And I always repeat this because it's an absolute necessity. When you go out into your own garden and you do your pruning, you bring those into the house and immediately put them into some lukewarm water and let them soak for a while, at least for an hour, to absorb and hydrate all of the water that's possible. When those greens come in here to the garden center, we cut the ends of the stems and put them into lukewarm water so that they also are hydrated. And they stay in water until you come and purchase them. Now, there will be a period of time between when you purchase it and when you get it home that I do suggest that you recut just the ends of those stems and again put it into lukewarm water and let it stay there until you're ready to work with it, because the longer, the better hydrated these leaves are, the longer they will last. Also, when you have completed your arrangement, you need to be sure that the oasis, if you're using oasis, take that container to the sink, that arrangement to the sink, wet it down from the top so that the oasis is kept moist, and let it sit until you're sure that it's not going to drip moisture on your table. Okay, I did put something in here, yes, I did. It's over here. In the greenhouse, we sell these cork boards that are wonderful for sitting under plants. I use them for sitting under my arrangements also. They're hidden often by the tablecloth or the table runner, if that's what I'm using, or I pick a smaller one that the arrangement will cover. But I don't want to ruin my furniture with any water, and I don't want you to do that either. So think about protecting the surface of your table. Okay, you've conditioned your flowers. I always have to go through what I have to have handy here because I'm working with so many greens and it's so rough on the hands. I keep on hand a pair of foxgloves. Treat yourself to a pair of foxgloves. We have a few here at the Fair Oaks location in our gardener's gift area, and I highly recommend them. I can now feel everything that I'm doing, and it's fantastic. If I'm working with really wet things for an extended period of time, I'll slip some of the little inexpensive rubber gloves over the top of them. Okay. So I'm ready to arrange. I'm ready to give you some thought processes as to how I deal with these fresh greens. Number one, I have to have my Felco pruners on hand. They're the best pruner I have ever had. And every now and then I'll be really sweet to James White and I'll say, James, could you sharpen my pruners for me, please? And of course he says yes. Here we go. And then I have to have a pair of Joyce chin scissors. I've been using these for years. They were originally designed by a cook, Joyce Chin, and they work in the kitchen. They work to deadhead outside in your garden, and they work for the smaller stems here. And so I have several pair of these, and all these tools are labeled with my name. I'm very particular about my tools. A good pair of sharp scissors. I keep on hand a little pair of wire cutters because you do not want to cut wires with your Joyce chins, although there is a place down at the bottom where you can cut wires with your Felco pruners. All right, and then I have a good kitchen knife, sturdy kitchen knife on hand because you have to cut your oasis and sometimes you have to cut other things too. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the basic arrangement. Although I don't have one here right now, I want to show you how I begin. And this is very basic, but can be very beautiful, and you can vary things. This would be for your dining table. You would have to determine how long you want it to be, how much of that table you want to cover, and how wide you want to be. The height is very much controlled by, they always say elbow to tip of finger. Well, mine's going to be considerably shorter than your average person. But here we go. I set that first stems in to set the length. And this one's approximately 23, 24 inches. And then the next ones I set are this end, the same distance. Measure them if you need to. I set the width in the same fashion here and in back here. Again, measure if you need to. And then I set the height in this area. All right, you've got your dimensions set. I used that same plant material, which is fantastic, to do the filling with. And so I went back in and I will fill even more, okay? And this could be any number of types of greenery that just has a graceful tip to it. So use whatever pleases you. All righty. Then I would begin to put in my other materials. All right, so that would be the shape for the oblong one. Let's bring up one. Not everybody has an oblong table. And so I did one that's round. You would follow the same principle. You would set your dimensions, width, all the way around with several pieces, and then not extend, although you will see from this that I've broken that rule a little bit. Rules can be bent, they can be broken depending upon what the rule is, okay? And I love using this Carolina sapphire because it's so airy and graceful, and so I can get away with that. Extending past this pine and past the magnolia that's here. And so I set that width then, and I continued to place the structure of this design first. And then I went back with the sapphire and tucked that down. This is in Oasis, and you want to be very sure that when you're pressing that stem in, that it's very firm and down into the Oasis. Otherwise, it won't stay hydrated. Then I tucked in a little bit of the pine. I love the white pine because it's so wispy and very fragrant also. And then tucked in a little bit of boxwood. When I'm pressing those stems in, like this one, for instance, I usually kind of gently hold that while I press it firmly because I want it to go really down into there. Okay, this one is a little taller because I love pedestals and I'll often use a cake stand. But when you're actually having your dinner, you may want to take it off that and sit it on the table so that the height is not a problem. But in between, I really do enjoy sitting. And this one is made in one of those little round designer bowls. You could also sit this into a beautiful container of your own if you choose to do that. So everything is very versatile. Now, you can decorate this further if you choose. You can use, and we are doing the branches with an awful lot of things. I do a lot with the outdoor containers, But you could also, because it's airy, you could also add some of these red twig dogwood branches, you see, to this arrangement if you chose to do that. So that's one option. And then you could also do pine cones. I have wired a number of the little pine cones. And here again is when I would use these wire cutters. And I would probably group them. I'm not terribly into doing this because it kind of looks a little polka dotty if you do that. So I really kind of like to use them in groupings. And it goes right into that oasis. And then you could do some other fun things too. In that wiring process, and I will show you how to do that, I wire from both sides. You see the difference here? I like the contrast that that gives. Okay. You tuck that down inside, and that's sort of in threes. And then I would repeat that through that arrangement. I kind of like the pine cones. If you choose to, you can spray them gold. I did, and we carry products called Design Master. It's one of the best sprays, paints that you can get, I think. And this one is the gold, but we have bronze and others too. And I like to mix the gold, the bronze, and the silver. I didn't do it here, but it's well done. This would be pretty in there also. Okay, and I like to turn them around because it gives you different texture, okay? You could also hot glue these in if you chose to do that, okay? So I often will use that in conjunction with even some leaves. If I'm doing the gold, you could come back in and tuck in some gold. I have sprayed the green part because there's a brown back. I've sprayed the green part with the gold spray. And that's really a fun thing to do also. Okay, let me move this out of the way and sit this back in its place. And I want to bring over something that I didn't do. I give all the credit to Norma Bloomingdale because she cranks out the most beautiful kissing bowls and these trees. This is done in a block of oasis. It is a block just like this, turned straight up. And you set the width down here with a few sprigs. You set the height up here with a few sprigs in between, and then fill in. When you're working with oasis, it's rather fragile. And so you don't want to change your mind too many times about where you're going to put something. Sort of make up your mind where you're going to put it and then put it in. Don't overfill. And it's very easy to do that with something like this tree. It's amazing how much territory that boxwood will cover. So go sparse at first. And if it's necessary, then go back and tuck another piece or two in. She has decorated this, and she, by the way, put that oasis in an attractive container, whereas normally she does it in the little green designer bowl. But she's tucked in some berries, and they are tucked into the oasis. And she's tucked in a couple of birds. It was my intention to show you, but with this COVID thing going on, I don't know how many is going to be able to enjoy Christmas parties. But one of the fun things for these little trees is to use it as an hors d'oeuvre tree. You can buy the little, what do you call the little wooden spikes at the grocery store, and you can tuck the little cherry tomatoes and cheese bits and other little knickknacks, push them right into here. That becomes the decoration. And then you can have a nice little dip by your tree and dip in your celery or dip in your broccoli or dip in your tomatoes. And it's a fun thing to do, you know. It's also a fun thing to do to take to someone that may not be putting up their own Christmas tree. Now, again, with all of this, you have got to keep it alive by keeping it moist. So this is a good candidate for taking to the kitchen sink and watering from the top, because it's the top that's going to dry out first. And that is thank you to Norma. And she creates quite a few of those. Okay, now this was my really fun thing, because normally my kitchen is where everybody chooses to congregate. Fortunately, with a lot of their open spaces in our homes, whether it be open to the dining space or open to the other rooms, there's plenty of room to congregate. But the actual kitchen space seems to be the favorite spot. So I have a large, Danny, would you join me for just a moment? It's awfully nice to have some good looking muscles around, and he's going to lift this arrangement for me. Yes, just lift up the arrangement. And can you do that and shift it over here? Because I love this. Okay. Thank you. This cutting board and many others like it was made by a gentleman here in Virginia, and they're so beautiful. Lots of different sizes, but the wood is lovely. I happen to have a couple of lovely cutting boards and one of his at my home. And on my kitchen table, where a lot of the food is presented, I always love to have an arrangement. And walking through the store again, and I hid a little bit of this, and my intention was to redo and make it smaller. But this is like a colander, or similar to, because it's got wonderful little handles, and it said kitchen to me. And I wanted to put it on that cutting board and then spread out some of the fun little things, the cranberries, the mixed nuts, the little oranges, garlic, all of the fun things, just to pick up some of that kitchen fun. This is also done with Oasis. Now, when I do Oasis in containers, I like for that Oasis to come up above the rim wherever possible, so that I can put stems in sideways if I choose to do so. So when I put the Oasis, wet Oasis, into this container, I was sure that I had it a little high. And then into that went this fun little Chamaecyparis, dragon's wing, I think it's called. Black dragon. Okay, that's it. Black dragon grows to about 15 feet and is a wonderful shrub for sun or part shade. I have two or three that are in a fair amount of shade, and they're doing very well. And then I use the white pine, a staple, and the American boxwood. I love the English also, but I've tucked that inside. And what else do I have? That's primarily it. As you can see with it cascading out of here, that it's just such fun. Looks like the little uh, blooming part of this actually is what you're seeing here. And I probably began with that because I wanted it to cascade over, and I wanted it to have a little bit of height and some color with the berries. I find that these berries are just so useful. They so say Christmas. And then I put into that the pine cones. And again, I've used the opposite end in some of these, all wired on an 18 gauge wire. Now, if I did the right thing, and if I did the wrong thing, I'm going to double wire one for you, okay? Because it looks to me like I forgot to bring up the one to show you how to wire. So what I'm going to do is clip off this, because it's important for you to know how to do that. Forget that there's a wire on here. I have part of that wire protruding out one side. I pull very, very firmly through here and tie that off. Now, you can cut it with wire cutters to any length that you choose and put it into place. This has been sprayed with the crystal clear glaze. I love the little sheen that it gives to this, and you can actually spray your greens with it too. It really sort of helps to seal, but it gives it a nice glaze. See how easy that is to tuck down into place? So the sprays are wonderful. I think it actually helps to hold the moisture in. You know, I did not tell you that it's important to use something that helps you keep down the bacteria with this, and we do use it when we're working with our greens here. It's called Prolong. It's the same thing that you use to help preserve your Christmas trees. And by the way, please do keep your fresh Christmas trees hydrated. And remember to put some Prolong into the water when you add to that. It doesn't hurt at all to add hot water to your Christmas tree. I'm not saying add hot water to this. Lukewarm's fine or regular. But to the Christmas tree, it helps to keep that base of that tree pores open. And so I will often use hot water to do that. Okay, Danny, I need your handsome muscles again. Can you please sit that into place, back into place? All righty. And then could you please lift this up, and I'll take the turntable. Okay, and I do love working with a turntable because it gives me a better perspective. Now, Danny, a little to the side over there. Okay, there we go. I'm not usually so demanding. Is that demanding, Danny? Okay. No, I've decided to have a little back muscle issue. So lifting some of these heavy things is not such fun today. So it's really nice to have somebody I can tell what to do. All right. Outside containers, let's touch on those just for a moment, because this is one of the most popular things that we have right now, other than the regular centerpiece. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. This is a plastic container that holds water. It has a large block of Oasis, although regular Oasis can be done too, thoroughly soaked, put into place, and then you just sit this container into your existing container or a beautiful container by your front door, on your deck, on your patio, wherever it's attractive. Danny, did we put in the picture from the lady with the, okay, we'll get to that one day. It's a fun kind of thing because you can have a good time with these. Our customer had a face, it was concrete, a large face, and she wanted something unique. And so I used some of this wild Camassiferous in it so that it looked like hair going in every direction. And it became a conversation piece. So why not, have something beautiful? In this wet oasis, and if you add to it periodically, and it doesn't have to be every day, it's outside, so it's going to stay cold. It's not going to dry out as fast as if it were inside. So 2 or 3 times a week, maybe. And if it freezes, don't worry about it. I have my containers go through January and into February, and they're still beautiful. The first thing that I put in, and I left it pre-done so that you could see, and again, it's rising up above the top of that container so that I can put things in sideways if I choose to. I put in some of the branches of the red twig dogwood, and then I put in a large branch of the berries, okay, the holly berries. And then I decided to add something wispy and area with the sapphire. Okay. Now, where am I going to go from there? This is where I would like to talk to you a little bit about the greens. On some of the containers that I have done downstairs, I have used the noble fir. And knowing how to work with this makes a lot of difference. Number one, I will go in and harvest all of the larger pieces. In fact, I'll actually harvest most of them. When you're working with your greens, save the small pieces, not the teeny tiny pieces, but the small pieces, because you'd be surprised how much you'll use those. And at the end of the show, I'll share with you how I chose to use some. Now, this is going to be a good cut. I have bigger cutters downstairs. We'll see how well I do with this. Okay, your oasis tears up easily. And so I want to be sure I trim that very carefully where I've removed some of those stems. I want to cut that right down, and I want to take away this piece because I want to put this down into that oasis. And then I'm going to trim some of those little needles away also, because that'll tear the oasis up. And that's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to tear up my oasis. Now, I'm not recommending manipulating, okay, except under these conditions. You can manipulate your greens to some degree and bend them a little bit, because I'm going to put this deep into this container. And this is how, see how I'm going to hang on to this so I can press against it, pressing down and firmly into that container. I would probably put 2 or 3 other pieces. You can also go back, and here again, let me turn that away so you can see. I'm going to trim away those needles again, make that easy to go in. And you can use some of this as filler, like so. Okay. Okay, and I would probably use 2 or 3 other pieces firmly into place. Remember, you're dealing with wind, etc., outside, and you don't want the branches to be blown out. Okay, I love working with Magnolia, and I'll pick some pretty pieces. This one is so pretty, I can use it just as it is, okay? So I'm going to cut the end of that one again a little bit to smooth it out. And where am I going to put that? Well, now let me see. I think I will put that right here. And you know what? I need to cut that again. I need to look, see where I'm cutting it, just above that. Now I have 2 lovely pieces I can use. So this is going to be better in scale. I'm going to push that one down into place. And perhaps this one would be lovely over here. Now, obviously, this is not a finished arrangement because you're going to repeat some of this. And actually, okay, I see where that hole is. I don't like that one the way it is. Sometimes this happens, but you don't want to change your mind too many times. But I'm going to put it back in that same hole. It's just going to be a little shorter because that was out of scale. Okay, then you can keep going, oftentimes with the boxwood. And by the way, if you have your own boxwood, this is a fine time to do some judicious pruning. You can go, and I have some very large boxwood. You can go deep in, this is a long piece, but it's okay to cut a few of those pieces around if you've got a large bush, because that opens up the air and the sunshine and makes that plant much more healthy. And so, let me see. I don't think I need it quite that tall. So I'm going to trim away some of these little pieces. And remember now, you are saving all your little clippings, or some of them anyway. I'm going to recut that. And I'm going to thin this just a little bit. And I can use that into here. Okay. Now, you've used your imagination, right? You've got some more of each of these repeated throughout this. And let me see. Just imagine that over in here is more of the noble fir. And then you'll continue to add your boxwood. Now, if you don't need it to be viewed all the way around, you just want to put enough greens back here to hide that oasis, because you don't want to come out of the house and see the backside of this and it not be pretty. All right. Do we understand that particular part of the design? Okay, Danny. I'm ready for you to move this one out of the way. Okay. And I think that I've covered a fair amount of territory. So, thank you, Danny. So I'm going to share a little grand finale with you that's just fun for me. And then, Sally, do we want to take just a few questions? Okay.
Yeah, we can take a few questions.
Okay. All right. I've saved my little pieces, right? And once upon a time, I collected teacups, etc., etc. You know, we go through phases, don't we? This was one of them. Okay, so I put that pretty little thing there. Well, actually, it goes there, doesn't it? And then into the teacup, because I loved all the colors that are there. And there are a lot of times you want a sweet little arrangement tucked somewhere. I always love a sweet little one over my kitchen sink, maybe in the bathroom, maybe on the bookcases. But there's oasis in this little one, and I've tucked in the tidbits. See all these little tidbits I've got here? That's what's in here. And there's the sapphire and the noble fir. And then into that, I sprayed again some of my hydrangea. You know, if you still have dry hydrangea outside and it looks kind of rough right now, you'd be surprised how it come to life when you spray it. Okay, so we're tucking that here, and that is my little grand finale. And I'm very pleased, and hopefully you've enjoyed. Maybe there's something I've helped you with today or inspired you to do and to enjoy and stay healthy.
Thank you, Peggy. All right, we've got a few questions. So I just want to tell everybody, if we don't get to your questions today and you have something you really need help with, feel free to hit reply to the reminder emails that went out, and you can send it to me. I'll give it to Peggy, or you can call the store, stop by and visit. So we definitely want to answer all your questions, but we might not be able to. So Peggy, a few people have asked if you could go back over the best way to keep the arrangements fresh.
The best way to keep the arrangements fresh is to condition the greens first. We condition them here, but they're going to be out of water for a little while till you get home and get settled in. So we recommend, because sometimes these stems close up fairly quickly. It's like recutting your Christmas tree. Take it home, get it into warm water as soon as possible. It's like make a little recut. And I'm not talking about a big recut. Here on the boxwood, just take a little bit off and put it right away into some lukewarm water. And the same thing if you go out into your garden and you cut it and come into the house, put it as soon as possible into some lukewarm water, into which you will have added, according to the directions, the prolong. Okay. Sometimes you'll get little packages from florists, and we sell those little packages too. That's a very useful too. This is very economical and does the same thing. And then keep it fresh, whether it's an Oasis or I frequently use a pin holder in mine. Take it to the kitchen sink, add to the top so that the tip top of that Oasis gets moist, let it drain off and put it back into place. And inside the house where it's warm, you will need to do that every other day or every 3 or 4 days for sure. Um, and that's pretty much, I hope, answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Do you know about how long you can expect them to last if you take good care of them?
If you take really good care of them, they should certainly last through Christmas and into January. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sometimes if something says to you, if you're using the Christmas balls or whatever, or something that really says Christmas, you can take that out and enjoy those greens right on. You know?
That makes sense. We've had a few questions about the Oasis. People wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about the different sizes and ones you were using for some of the arrangements. Um,
Okay, I've just brought this piece up with me. Okay, the normal block of Oasis is this one. It's a rectangular thing. Thoroughly soaked. Give it a chance to soak. I have in the big arrangement that Danny brought over for me a larger block, which is fairly new. I used it for the first time last year, and now I'm using it this year in the big things. But if it's not always available, 2 or 3 of these does the exact same thing. And I mentioned in my little arsenal of tools here a good heavy duty knife, because sometimes you have to cut that to fit. I had to cut a little piece to go into the teacup. I had to cut a piece to go into the other things. So you just cut what will fit into your container, but I do like for it to come up above the top a little bit. Just be sure it's Oasis that absorbs the water well. Put it into, and I love to start it in lukewarm water, and I will put some prolong into that water because you want to keep the bacteria down. And then when you re-wet it, that's it. You know, it's Oasis. You use it wet and you keep it moist.
Thanks, Peggy. And this is jumping back a minute, but I forgot to ask about this. For the people who are taking cuttings for their own yard, do they need to take any extra steps? This person asked specifically, do we need to submerge the greens to clean off insects? Like, do we need to submerge them completely?
Well, if you did, you would just swish them around and lift them up. You can't leave your greens submerged because they'll begin to spoil. Any greens that are down underwater will increase the bacterial goings on within that container. So you don't want to do that. If you're concerned about insects, you know, and you should be. I know there's been a couple of times that we've been reminded about the lanternfly and being to kind of check your tree to be sure there are no egg masses in it. Just give it a good looking over. And if you want to swish those greens, it's okay, but only swish them around and then stand them up. Okay. They don't want to be submerged.
Sounds good. Thank you. Um, okay, we have a couple of questions about specific products. What was the wire gauge that you were using for the pine cones?
I'm so glad that you went back and asked that question, because the gauges of the wire is very important. Um, and I have the two most typical ones that I use here. This is 18 gauge. The smaller the number, the larger the wire. 18 gauge. Why? Because I can still manipulate and bend it. It's my hands will do that. Okay. Remember, I said you put it here and you go around and you now it's still strong enough to stand up. So that's why I choose that gauge of wire. Now, this I love using Lotus Pods, and this one has been sprayed with the crystal clear glaze. If this did not have a stem on it, I would push that wire through, okay? Bring it down. We're pretending this doesn't already have a stem because sometimes you buy it and it doesn't have a stem. So I'm twisting it really, really well. And now I can cut it to whatever length I want and place it in my arrangement or on a wreath. And you might be gluing it if you're doing it on a wreath. So that's 18 gauge wire. The other wire that we use a great deal, is a fine wire. That is for our bow making process. And it's usually 26 or 28 gauge wire. And we do tape it with the florist tape. And it's wonderful. I mentioned to you earlier that I thought a nifty little ribbon might be kind of fun, not maybe with this color, but let's say that you're doing your bows. And while I brought the Merrifield bow to Merrifield a few years back, a lot of years back, now I really don't make them for our customers because my hands have made a few too many bows. All righty, but here's the principle behind bow making. You want a streamer. I'm going to make this a long one. You want to make a loop, and that's going over this way, left or right. You got to work left to right, otherwise you'll lose your loop. I'm going to twist this because it's one-sided ribbon. I'm going to bring it back to the center. I'm going to twist again. Now this is being made with that infamous little loop in the center, okay, which is a little harder to learn for some, okay? So I'm just going to put 3 loops. Now you can see I'm going back and forth, and everything else is being held by my thumb. So I'm turning that again, making that one just a little bit longer, turning it, making that one kind of match up. I am going to twist this streamer down. And remember, I said have some good scissors on hand, and I hope these are. All right, cutting that. Now, I'm going to take that taped 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to tie the middle right there. I'm going to do this, pulling it back here. This is where I have difficulty today, is if it's a really bulky ribbon, it's hard for me to pull it tight. Okay, tight, tight, tight. And hopefully I'm not wiring my foxgloves into it. Okay, so this is just a little informal little bow. Okay, and one could, if you just pretend that maybe there's something red or different color, have that cascading down. So bows are fun. You know, this bow could go over in here. Lots of fun. So there's the 2 wires that I use most consistent. We also carry a lot of the spool wire, which is usually 24 gauge, 22, 24, 26, somewhere in that area. And that's used to bind, if you're doing it yourself, a garland or a wreath, if you're making your own wreath. So those are pretty much the wires that I use. Okay.
Thanks, Peggy. And one more product question. If you could repeat the names of the sprays that you were using
Yes,
for
I'll be
the
happy to.
foliage and for the pine cones.
Right. Okay. It's Design Master is the brand, and we carry several different ones, and actually can get the tinted ones too. All you have to do is ask Wilson downstairs to order it for you. But the gold that I showed is the 14 karat pure gold finish, and the other one is the crystal clear glaze. And I actually sprayed the cones, and I sprayed some of the foliage too because it did give it a nice sheen. Okay, the gold I used to spray the the magnolia leaves. And I really do like using these. I think I'm going to do something on package wrap next week. And the fun thing would be using some of these gold leaves on some of that. Wouldn't that be fun? To put those little gold things inside. Or, if you wanted to do so, you could use gold leaves in anything. Let me hold that up. The gold is kind of fun, but it's not an in-your-face gold. It's kind of a nice one. Okay.
Do you ever spray paint the Lotus Pods?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can spray those gold if you want to. This particular one has been sprayed with the crystal clear glaze. It gives it a nice sheen. Okay. Yes.
Thanks, Peggy. Okay, let's see. We have just two more questions, I believe. The first one is, could we learn a little bit more about sharpening the pruners?
My father, I grew up on a large farm in South Georgia. My father was an expert at sharpening things. We used a lot of hose, not HOSE, HOE, chopping cotton and various and sundry things. And he liked his tools to be sharp. So the best tool that I ever worked with was a hoe that had been sharpened so much it was almost round. I should have learned how to do that, and I didn't. That's why I go and sweetly ask Jane White to sharpen my pruners, okay? Sorry about that. There are a few other things today that we need to be teaching our kids, okay? But I wish I had paid more attention. Thank you.
Oh, gracious. Okay, okay, the last question. I think, okay, I may not understand this correctly. So if you're still on the call, feel free to let me know if I'm not asking this correctly. But they wanted to know if you're doing the boxwood appetizer tree, is that safe to use, or are there any like greens that you can't use that aren't recommended if you're serving food?
Generally speaking, that's not a problem, not with any of the ones that I've used here. I do recommend that you not do the berries. I know I love working with nandinas, and yes, I know that nandina can be invasive, but I've lived in the same house for 62 years, and I don't have nandina all over creation at my house. And I love it, and I love using the berries, but don't use them on your table or where your cat or your dog or your little kid can get it, because they're a little poisonous. Okay. Not to worry about the birds. There was one episode last year where somebody had an issue with birds. I have never had birds eat my nandina. Never. They seem to be brighter than that. Okay. So don't worry about the greens, the magnolia, the pine, the chamaecyparis. None of that is a problem. And here's what I said when I said go into your grocery store and buy these things. This is just fun. And since I've got the time, I'm going to show you anyway. I love this mixed bunch of, I'm not going to, I am too. I am going to bring it over because now this one has the little berries in it. If I were doing the hors d'oeuvre tree, I would take those berries out, okay? Because this goes in nicely. And I do want you to see how fun this can be. This is a mixed bag of different kinds of tomatoes. But look how fun that is. And this is where those nice clippers come in handy. Okay, and you can do different kinds and colors of cheeses. And I certainly would break up some cauliflower, because wouldn't that be pretty on there? See what I'm talking about with making an hors d'oeuvre tree? And then you just take it out and you dip it in It's all fun. Okay, Missy, I think that's about it for today, right?
Thank you. Yes. And it's 1 o'clock and we answered all the questions that came in. So thank you so much, Peggy. Do you have anything you want to conclude with before I tell everybody about our survey?
Well, I sincerely hope that you will come into, particularly in all three of our locations. You know, we have many customers who like to go to all three places. While basically we have the same things, there are always a few differences. And that few difference, one here is having more of this arranging stuff going on and more of the tools and more of that kind of thing. So if you come in, come take a walk through the whole place, but particularly come out and watch them making these arrangements. And please visit Leo and his wonderful wreath making crowd. I intended to bring one of those up to show you because they are magnificent. Very good. Custom made wreaths. I want to say thank you for watching.
Thank you, Peggy. And I just want to tell, we have one person. Peggy is at the Fair Oaks location, and she is right. I love going to the greens department there, so I would highly recommend it. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
All right, just to kind of go ahead and close out quickly for everybody who has been on these calls before, you all know, but we send out a survey after the class. That's helping us since these Zoom programs are new and Peggy is doing a fabulous job and so are other instructors, but we want to learn what topics you're interested in hearing about, if there's anything we can do to improve your experience. So we offer the chance to win a gift card for completing the survey, and we'll be sending out a coupon as well. So we appreciate any feedback you can give us. If you have questions to follow up, feel free to hit reply. You can send me an email, call, visit the Fair Oaks store, any of our other stores. We'd be happy to talk with you. I know Peggy would. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Peggy.
I want them to know that if it's negative, you're advised to tear it up.
Yes, anything except negative advice. Anyways, so yeah, thank you all so much. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas. And Peg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye-bye.